Some places were silence like a shroud. This stretch of New Mexico wore it like armor. Harlan Pike spotted her at a distance, a small figure pinned to a red sandstone boulder near a dry arroyo, the sky above her the color of gunmetal and mercy. He reined in 50 yards off. The wind pushed dust through sage and skeleton grass. It carried the faintest sound of iron tapping stone, like the desert had a heartbeat. She sat cross-legged, back against the rock, wrists shackled by new iron. Not trail scrap, not ranch chain. Blacksmith true and prison strong. The chain wrapped the stone twice, neat as a banker's ledger. Her dress was sun-faded but clean. Too clean for a week in the open. And she smiled. Not a plea, not a tremble. A church portrait smile, steady as a psalm. Most men would have kept riding. Harlan wasn't most men. He was the kind the desert counted on to make mistakes. He pushed his sorrel mare up the long slope, hand loose near the colt, eyes tricking the rim of every low mesa and greasewood patch. Nothing moved but wind. Nothing sounded but the small iron tick where chain kissed rock. 20 feet off, he swung down. Boots whispered over gravel. The girl's eyes followed him, green, cool, measuring. Her braid lay sharp over one shoulder. A thorn had snagged a lock of hair, and she hadn't bothered to pull it free. "You're late," she said, that smile never leaving. "Didn't stop to dress," Harlan said. His voice had the rasp of roads too long ridden. "You aren't who I pictured." "Who'd you picture?" "Someone who'd keep going." He drew close to the chain and crouched. The work was professional. Good steel, clean rivets, double-lock cuffs. The padlock's keyway had a modest bite, crafted in town, not camp. The metal was warm with sun, and the cuffs had raised angry crescents on her wrists, old enough to hurt, fresh enough to bleed with a tug. "What's your name?" he asked. "Does it matter?" she said. "To me." She tilted her head. The smile flickered like a candle at a window. "Call me Sera." He slid a thin pick from a sewn pocket in his vest. The girl watched his hands the way a hawk watches field mice, without hurry and without mercy. A life ago, he'd kept locks for other reasons. A man who has walked both sides of a badge learns quiet tools. "You're practiced," she murmured. "Bad habit," Harlan said. "Worse company." The pick found tumblers like old friends. The first lock breathed and yielded. Sera flexed, skin whitening around steel. When he reached for the second, her hand shot out and stopped him. Her grip was iron. Not a child's strength. Not fear either. Calculation lived in the set of her mouth, cold arithmetic. "You could ride on," she said. "You still can." "What kind of thing is that to say?" "The kind that keeps men alive," she said softly. He worked anyway. The sky deepened to a darker pewter. Heat bled off the rock in tired waves. Harlan's mare stamped, head swinging to the east. There was a seam in the silence now, faint as breath under a door. "Who put you here?" he asked. "Men who like finishing what they start." "Names." "Names don't help when bullets do the talking." "Names help on stones," he said. Sera's eyes shifted to the horizon. "They call them Blackwood. I call them what they are." "What's that?" "Hunters. Of men. Of debts." The second lock clicked with a small, contented sound. The chain slacked and fell. He gathered the coil by habit, because tidy things felt like the one war a man could still win. "Stunt." He offered a hand. She didn't take it. She rose on her own, light on her feet. The smile stayed, but something behind it coiled and watched. She brushed dust from her skirt with the care of a lady who remembered teachers and nuns. "You got a place?" she asked. "North," he said. 8 miles. Cabin. 2 wells when the world behaves. Today it won't. Why's that? "Because men who plan chains plan afternoons," she said. "They planned yours." Harlan looped the iron and tied it to his saddle horn. The mare shifted again, ears stabbing east. He tasted iron in the wind, the taste of distant rifles and untold promises. "How long you been sitting here?" he asked. "Long enough to make peace with thirst," Sera said. "Not long enough to forget it." "Eat." She smiled. "You offering?" He fished out a strip of jerky and the last of a biscuit wrapped in clean cloth. Sera took neither. She was studying the lay of the land again, the way a woman studies a map before walking through the dark. I was told you ride this trail Tuesdays, she said. Counting strays. Harlan's hand stalled. Told by who? Men who know your hours better than they know their prayers. He eased his shoulders back, letting the weight of the Colt settle proper at his hip. He'd ridden north of town yesterday at first light, paid for flour and salt, heard the usual gossip, the dying well at the Mitchell spread, a new preacher who shouted like thunder truths, a poker dealer whose right hand moved quicker than sin. No name Blackwood, spoken above a whisper. You know me? He asked. Enough. Her voice thinned. Your wife died 3 winters past. You live alone with a horse named Brindle. Sorrel, he corrected, quick, and a scar under your left shoulder from an arrow that had no business being that true. She looked him over like a ledger. Harlan Pike, who once wore a badge long enough to learn the cost of it. The chain on the horn sounded louder than it should when the wind struck it. Harlan's stomach went cold. Who told you that? The same men who chained me to a rock with clean hands. She nodded to the east. They're coming. See, he looked. The horizon held what it always holds. Distance, lies, the far shimmer of heat. Then he saw it. Not dust yet. Movement under it. 3 riders in a broken line, all angles and intent. Trap, he said. Sera's smile moved up a fraction. You're quick. You changed part of it. Yes, she said. And no. He almost asked. He didn't. The question would buy him nothing but words, and words were dry as Saturday sermons when Led went to church. You set for them? He asked. I'm set for what I came for. For the first time the smile faltered, and he saw a child in the lines of her mouth. A younger grief, old as silt. You shouldn't have stopped, Harlan. But men like you always do. He looked at the land, drawing angles like a carpenter in his head. The arroyo's notch cut low toward a cluster of broomweed. The boulder stood in a saddle where bullets could cross without much wind push. The only cover worth the name was the horse and a lie. You ride? He asked. When a horse is kind. Brindle's mean. He loosened the mare's reins and patted her neck. Lucky for you. She likes liars. A flicker crossed Sera's eyes at the word. He filed it away. There'd be time for truth if they made it to an evening. The riders grew. Harlan counted rifles. The lead man rode easy as if the desert had promised him something. Tall in the seat. Hut him shop. 2 more fan behind. Far enough to keep each other's flanks honest. Blackwood? Harlan asked. Eli, Sera said. And his sermons. You working for them? No, she said. I'm working on them. Difference matter much at this distance. It will, she said, and for the first time her smile felt like a blade warmed by a palm. He slipped the coil of chain from the horn and held it in his left hand. Iron is honest. You can swing it, and it tells the truth it hits. He placed Sera behind the boulder's shoulder and crouched where he could see the arroyo cut and the rider's approach and the sky that might do something forgiving if it remembered how. The lead man called from 40 yards in a voice made for courthouse steps and hangings. Afternoon, Mr. Pike. We've been meaning to meet. Harlan did not answer. The desert didn't ask questions it didn't care to hear answered. You found our keepsake, Eli Blackwood said. His smile was an empty bank vault. Good of you to mind it. Your keepsake has wrists, Harlan said. Temporary measure, Eli said. Sometimes a songbird gets ideas about sky. Then by a bigger cage, Harlan said. He rose enough to be seen clear. What do you want with a songbird? He asked. To see who'd stop to sing with it, Eli said. We were told you'd know the tune. Sera's whisper slipped from behind the stone. Don't play. Not playing, Harlan said without moving his lips. Eli pushed his hat up with a gloved thumb. Here's the short of it. 5 years back a man died in a small cell with no windows, and men with titles called it fever. Trouble with that word is it doesn't smell like powder. He leaned, and Harlan saw the dead eyes he'd seen in mirrors at certain hours of certain nights. You were there, Mr. Pike. Harlan felt a river he thought long dry move under his boots. A lot of men were there, he said. Only one walked away clean, Eli said. We got ourselves a question only you can answer. Harlan felt Sera's breath on the stone. The wind shifted and brought with it sage and the old taste of lightning before a storm remembers itself. He set his feet. Ask it, he said. Who paid? Eli said, for what happened in that cell. The chain in Harlan's hand felt heavier. Sometimes the desert gives a man a choice dressed up like a command. Harlan knew what the land asked of him now. He didn't like the asking. He smiled without showing teeth. You rode all this way for a history lesson? Eli's eyes thinned. No, Mr. Pike. We rode to close a ledger. The rider's hand sank toward leather in a slow, practiced him. Harlan Pike, who had buried the better part of his heart 3 winters back and the rest of it in places he didn't speak to God about, lifted the chain with his left hand and let his right drift easy over the colt. Then say grace, he murmured. The first click of a hammer carried across the space like a knuckle on a coffin lid. The silence broke. The first shot cut the day in half. It wasn't Harlan's. It wasn't Eli's. It was the left-hand rider, impatient and young, putting a line of fire through the air that smashed stone above Harlan's ear. Gravel kissed his cheekbone. He didn't duck. He just breathed, slow and cold, and answered with one round that took the young rider clean from the saddle. The man spun like a drop prayer and hit the dust wrong side up. Eli never flinched. See there? Eli said mildly. Storm breaks fast on this plain. His right-hand brother threw his rifle to shoulder. Harlan stepped to the boulder's far edge, brought the colt up in a straight line, and shot the horse instead. The animal crumpled in a groan of muscle and leather. The rider vanished beneath it with a scream that turned to a wet choke. Sera didn't scream. She moved. From nowhere. No, from the neat hem of her boot, came a slender derringer bright as a wedding spoon. She didn't aim long. One soft cough of powder, and the iron ring on Eli's bridle snapped, sending the white-eyed animal skittering in a tight circle that ruined his angle. The little gun vanished again like it had been a thought. Eli laughed once. Not a happy sound. You were as advertised. Harlan's chain whistled. He'd looped it underhand and let it fly. It caught Eli's rifle barrel mid-lift and knocked the shot wild. The round kicked dust by Sera's dress and sang off into the blue. Harlan followed with 2 fast shots that chewed the earth by Eli's boot and made the outlaw's horse rear again, mean and scared. Then everything stopped. Silence moves different after gunfire. It's thicker, like the world is thinking about what it's done. Eli stroked his mount's neck until the animal found breath. He slid from his saddle with a grace that said he liked to live and expected to. His coat fell easy back to show the butt of a handsome colt with a mother-of-pearl grip. His eyes were the only unhandsome thing about him. Flat water with no sky in it. He smiled at Sera first. Miss, he said, you look better without the chain. Sera returned the smile with the same church portrait calm. I prefer my wrists free. And busy, Eli said, rubbing the bridle ring she'd shot loose. He turned to Harlan. Mr. Pike, you killed my brother's horse and my youngest. The ledger's getting lively. You wrote it open, Harlan said. Eli nodded as if he admired the line. We'll add poetry charges to the bill. Sera stepped from behind the rock now, slow and sure. The wind caught her braid. The thorn that had held a lock of hair finally fell and pinged against the stone. You said you had a question, she told Eli. Ask it or shoot and be done. Always business with you, Eli said. Fine. He set his hat with care on the horn and walked in like a man entering a parlor. 5 years back, the name Vernon Blackwood died of fever on a territorial sheet. Trouble is, paper don't bleed. Gunshot does. You were there, Mr. Pike. Who paid for that lie? Harlan's jaw set. A memory rose. Lamp smoke. A cell that smelled of lie and men. A sound like thunder in a narrow hall. A deputy with a story that didn't fit its boots. Men with titles, Harlan said. Say the title, Eli said. It tastes better out loud. Judge, Harlan said. The word came out like he'd bit it. Eli's eyes warmed by a degree. Which one? Harlan didn't oblige. Sera did. Harrison, she said quietly. Judge Harrison, out of Santa Fe. Eli's smile returned, simple and bright as a knife point. See? The lady understands efficiency. He tilted his head. Judge is dead now, and his pet deputy, Tom Walsh, ran off fat. Leaves you, Mr. Pike. The witness no one bought yet. You ain't buying me, Harlan said. Eli's hand hovered near air. We could rent you for an afternoon. Sera took a half step, not toward Eli, not toward Harlan, toward the space between. "There's a letter," she said. "Vernon wrote it the night before he died. Names. Sums. Proof enough to drown a capital." Eli blinked. "It was small, but it happened." "What letter?" "The one I took," Sera said. "From the jailer's desk when he went for coffee." Eli's smile turned, just slightly, to teeth. "You clever, wicked little thing." Harlan cut in. "And now?" Sera didn't look away from Eli. "Now I trade." "For what?" Eli asked. "Amnesty," she said, "and a horse." Harlan watched the math move over Eli's face. He'd seen ranchers do that with reins, and gamblers do it with queens. "Seems to me," Eli said, "I can take my amnesty, my horse, and my letter off your dead body after I'm done with Mr. Pike." "You could try," Sera said. "Ma'am," Harlan murmured, "you care to tell me which side of this you want me on?" Sera's smile tilted sad. "You're on your own side, Mr. Pike. Best I can offer you is a road that isn't lined with graves you dug." "Done digging," Harlan said. "Not today," Eli said, and his hand moved. Harlan shot first. So did Eli. The colts barked like winter dogs. Harlan's round tore Eli's coat at the shoulder and bit dirt behind. Eli's punched a groove through Harlan's hat and scalped air with a hot finger. Sera's derringer spoke again, but that small gun had decided its heroics for the hour. It clicked empty and sneered at fate. She tossed it, scooped the fallen rifle from under the dead horse, and racked the lever in a smooth steel sigh. "Down," Harlan snapped, and shoved her with a shoulder harder than his gentleness wanted. The move saved her from the brother under the horse, broken leg or not. The man had found a pocket pistol and sent a bullet hunting where her heart had been. It caught Harlan high under the rib and burned a red door through meat. He didn't fall. He leaned artfully on the boulder like a man taking in the view, and shot the broken brother in the wrist. The little pistol spun away. The man started crying like a child that had found its pain too late to put back. Eli advanced, low, quick, smart. Harlan met him in the middle of the dust and the chain. The two men circled in slow steps, guns held high and elbows tight, the way men do who expect to die twice. "Last ask," Eli said. "Who's paying you to keep quiet?" "Conscience," Harlan said. "That don't spend," Eli said and fired. Harlan's shot met in air, two sparks kissing and dying, and then Sera's borrowed rifle cracked like righteous thunder. The bullet took Eli square in the gun wrist. His Colt flew, pearl grip skittering over gravel, and his mouth opened in a laugh that bent into a curse. He stared at Sera. Something old moved through his eyes, recognition, then a cold pride. "You're his," Eli said. "Vernon's." Sera's chin lifted. "Daughter." "Then I owe you a wedding present," Eli said, and swung his boot at the chain still looped in Harlan's hand. The iron whipped. Harlan lost the coil, lost balance, and the knife Eli had kept quiet flashed. It would have gone in under Harlan's heart if Sera hadn't thrown herself across the space with a sound halfway between a sob and a prayer. The blade cut her sleeve and took a red kiss along the arm. The rifle but rose and fell with a crack that made Eli's eyes blink to separate stars. He stumbled to a knee. Harlan's boot found a knife and sent it thinking under the horse. He stepped in, put the Colt to Eli's cheek. "Ledger's closed," Harlan said. Eli's smile bloody. "I ain't the last column." From the east, thunder without a storm rolled low. For riders now, not three, crested the far swell. Men in city coats, hats neat, posture too clean for desert. Behind them a wagon with boards high and canvas tight. The kind of tidy you only see when law thinks it's safe. Sera's breath caught. "Crawford's men," she said. "Senator?" Harlan asked. Sera nodded once. "He took Harrison's seat and his sins. Hires out the Blackwoods to clean tables, then sends clerks to sign the receipts." Eli laughed from his knees. "Told you, Pike. Ledger's long." The lead new rider raised a white glove. His voice carried a little schoolhouse music when he called, genteel, practiced, thick with the kind of manners that get other men killed. "Mr. Pike." "Miss." "Sera, is it?" "We'll take it from here," he said. "Kindly lay down your arms. The territory thanks you for your service." Harlan didn't move. The hole under his rib ached like a bell after a blow. His fingers were sure on the Colt. Sera stood with the rifle heavy at her shoulder, blood working down her forearm in a dark silk thread. "Don't shoot," the clerkly rider said cheerfully. "You'll strike official property." "Which would be you or the wagon?" Harlan asked. "Both," the man said. He smiled. "And the future." Harlan tasted dust and something older, shame maybe. He had walked a road like this before, younger, believing titles stamped truth on a paper. "Future don't come with chains," he said. The clerk's smile stayed. "No, sir. With signatures." Behind him, the canvas of the wagon stirred. A woman's voice, low, composed, rose from inside. "Make this neat, Mr. Avery. We are not collecting headlines. We are collecting liabilities." Sarah's eyes sharpened. "Who's that?" "Miss Laurel Finch," Eli said, still smiling. "Senator's accountant, conscience, and queen." The wagon flap opened. She stepped down without offering a hand to anyone. Tall, dark hair pinned, dressed clean but cut for travel. Her posture said she knew rooms where men shouted and placed her name above the fire, and she never raised her voice to be heard. Her eyes were the rarest thing on the plane, patient. Harlan felt the earth shift a little. This was the kind of woman who could move a town by asking it to. "Mr. Pike," she said, nodding. "Miss Sera." "Mr. Blackwood. Let's finish this graceful." Sera lifted the rifle a fraction. "Come take it." Miss Finch regarded the red thread on Sera's arm, the chain, the dead, the broken brother under the horse. She folded her gloved hands. "I don't take," she said. "I buy." "Same sin," Harlan said. "Different him," she answered. The wind slid a hand across the arroyo and rattled the greasewood like dry applause. Somewhere a hawk cried a single note. Harlan looked at Sera. Her green eyes were bright and wrecked and stubborn. He looked at Miss Finch and a mouth that could make numbers into knives. He thought of Judge Harrison, of Tom Walsh with a smoking gun, of a cell that swallowed sound. He thought of graves with no names and names with no graves. He set his feet again on the narrow strip of land between law and justice. "Ma'am," he told Miss Finch, voice even as a sermon, "you ain't buying a thing today." Her eyes flicked to his side where blood darkened his shirt. "You won't stand long." "All I ever do," Harlan said, "is long enough." The clerk lifted his white glove again. Guns lifted with it, tidy as teeth. "Last chance," Miss Finch said, not unkind. Harlan's hand settled sure on the Colt. Sera's cheek touched the rifle stock. Eli Blackwood, grinning through blood, gave a little nod as if the whole mess amused him more than it could hurt. "Then let's see what your receipts look like," Harlan said. The ledger turned another page. The air tightened before the guns did. 100 yards of silence stretched between the living and the damned, and Harlan felt it, how the desert itself waited to see which name would echo next. The four riders spread in a half circle, rifles steady, sunlight flashing along clean barrels. Miss Laurel Finch stood behind them, calm as a parson at a hanging. Her gloved hand rested on the wagon door, white against the wood. "Mr. Pike," she called, "you have something that belongs to the territory, evidence, witnesses, and problems that breathe. Hand them over, and your name dies quiet." Harlan's voice came dry as the sand. "Ma'am, I've buried enough quiet. I ain't selling more." One of her men, a young lawman with bright buttons and a coward's pulse, lifted his rifle an inch too high. That inch made history. Harlan fired first. The first bullet dropped the young one where he sat. No scream, just the wind pulling through the hole it left. The others answered. Gunfire cracked across the open basin, dust jumping like ghosts. Sera crouched low, levering the Winchester with smooth precision. Every shot she took sounded like old payback. Miss Finch didn't move. She didn't even flinch when one of her riders tumbled from the saddle. She simply raised her hand, and the last man stopped firing. "Enough," she said. The command slid through the gun's smoke and the ringing silence afterward. Even the wind paused to listen. Harlan's Colt hung low, smoke trailing off the barrel. His breath came thin and uneven. Blood had spread wide under his ribs now, sticky and black against the shirt. He could taste copper and dust. "You ain't law," he said. Miss Finch smiled faintly. "Law is a shape," Mr. Pike. I'll make sure it fits the buyer. You're working for Crawford, Sera said, her voice sharp as glass. The senator who pays the Blackwoods to clean his name. Correction, Finch said. Paid. Mr. Crawford prefers his accounts settled. Her gaze moved to Eli, still on his knees, grinning through blood. Seems you left that ledger open. Eli coughed a laugh. Some debts collect themselves. Finch's expression didn't change. She nodded once to the last standing rifleman. The man stepped forward, placed his barrel against Eli's temple. No, Sera said. Yes, Finch replied. This concludes the contract. Eli smiled at Sera, a strange peace on his face. You've got his eyes, he whispered. The shot cracked. Dust lifted, and Eli fell forward into it. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then Sera raised a rifle and pointed it at Miss Finch. Her arms trembled, but her voice didn't. You think you can bury every sin in this desert, she said. There's always another shovel waiting. Finch met her aim with the patience of a woman who'd already counted her choices. You think shooting me changes anything? Sera's finger tightened on the trigger. Harlan's hand closed over hers. His grip was steady despite the blood slicking it. Don't, he said. She killed him, Sera hissed. He was gone long before that bullet. Harlan said quietly. Ain't no sense killing ghosts. Finch studied him for a long beat. You're dying, she said. Been doing that slow for years, Harlan replied. Then make it count, she said. Give me the letter, the proof, and I'll see your name off the bounty rolls. You'll die a free man. Harlan smiled a tired, bitter smile. Freedom's a word politicians use when they mean leash. Finch's calm cracked, just for a second. You think this land changes because one man refuses a deal? You think your honor will feed the orphans your bullet makes? Harlan's voice dropped to a whisper. No, ma'am. But it might keep him from starving on lies. The wind picked up again, carrying dust between them like a curtain. The last rifleman shifted, nervous, eyes flicking between Finch and Pike. Put the gun down, Finch ordered. I ain't the one shaking, Harlan said. The lawman's jaw clenched. You're bleeding out. Then shoot faster, Harlan said, and pulled the trigger first. The Colt roared one last time. The rifleman fell, a surprised look still painted on his face. Harlan swayed but didn't fall. His breath came short, shallow, like the air itself was leaving with him. Sera caught him as he buckled. Harlan, he smiled faintly, eyes hazy. Still here. Miss Finch stood frozen in the swirling dust, her white gloves now freckled with other men's blood. You can't stop it, she said. Another will come after me, then another. Men like Crawford don't die. They change names. Then maybe, Sera said softly, we stop writing them down. Finch blinked. You don't even know where to start. Sera's gaze was calm now, steady as dawn. I start by remembering. Finch studied her one last time, then turned away. She climbed back into the wagon, her voice fading as the horses pulled forward. Then remember this, girl. Every truth you tell costs someone their peace. Sera watched the wagon roll away until it vanished into the rising heat. Harlan was fading, his pulse weak under her hands. Don't talk, she whispered. Save your strength. He smiled faintly. Never was good at Savon. You'll live, she said. Maybe, he murmured. But if I don't, burn that letter. Let the dead keep their secrets. Sera shook her head. You don't believe that. No, he said, eyes closing. But I believe in you. The wind swept the last of the smoke away. Around them lay 3 bodies and a history too heavy to bury. Sera held Harlan close until the stars began to show, and the desert cooled from red to silver. His breathing slowed, each exhale a little softer than the last. When the moon climbed high, Harlan Pike stopped fighting time. Sera stayed there beside him, the rifle resting across her knees, the letter burning quietly in a small ring of fire. Tomorrow would come, with more lies and more riders. But for one night, the Badlands were clean. By morning, the fire was gone, and so was the letter. Only black flakes of ash clung to the rim of the small circle she'd drawn in the sand. The desert had eaten the proof, same way it always ate everything that dared to last. Sera sat beside what she'd made of a grave. Two rocks crossed with an old spur, Harlan Pike's hat resting on top. The rising sun caught the brim, and for a moment it glowed like something holy, though nothing about this land had ever been holy. "You said burn it," she whispered. "But the truth don't die that easy." The wind tugged her braid, scattering the dust over his boots. It felt like the world saying amen. By mid-morning, she'd saddled Brindle, though the mare looked back at the mound and stomped twice, refusing to move until Sera's hand brushed her neck. "He's gone," she said softly. "But you and me, we ain't." They rode west. No trail, no map, just the sun and the faint smell of juniper on the wind. Harlan had always said the desert was honest. It never lied, just took. Maybe he'd been right. Maybe that was why he'd stayed out here, when everyone else went chasing cities made of tin and greed. Sera rode until her canteen was half empty, until the heat pressed against her back like an angry god. Then she saw it, a line of riders on the horizon. Not many, 4, maybe 5, but they rode in formation. Professional. Her first thought was Finch's men. Her second was worse. Eli's brothers. They weren't all dead. Sera turned Brindle sharply toward a cut in the canyon. The mare obeyed, hooves striking sparks off the stone as they descended into the shadowed ravine. She rode fast and low, following the curve of the rock until the sound of hoofbeats thinned. When she finally stopped, her pulse was louder than the wind. A voice broke the silence behind her. "Running don't suit you." She spun, the colt drawn before the words finished. A man stepped from behind the rocks, tall, rough, his face familiar in ways that made her skin tighten. Not Eli, not one of his brothers. Tom Walsh, the deputy from the old days. Older now, hair gone gray around the edges, but his eyes were the same pale steel she remembered from the wanted posters. "You're supposed to be dead," she said. He smiled faintly. "Supposed to be, sure. But the dead don't get paid much. You worked for Harrison, then Crawford. I worked for whoever wrote my checks." Sera's jaw clenched. "You killed my father." Tom shrugged. "Orders." The word hit her harder than any bullet. It was the same one Harlan had used when he'd told her how her mother died. Orders. A word men hid behind when the devil signed their name. She kept the gun steady. "You're here to finish his work, then?" "Not quite," Tom said, stepping closer. "I'm here for you." "Why?" "Because you've got something Crawford wants back. That letter." She laughed, bitter, broken. "Burned it myself." He smiled again, like he'd expected that answer. "And did you read it before you did?" Her silence gave him everything. Tom nodded. "Then you know Crawford's real trade. You don't just buy silence, girl. He sells souls. Land grants, water rights, mining permits. Whole towns buried in ink and paper. That letter was proof." "I don't care," she said. "I'm done burying the dead for other people's sins." "You think I'll let you walk?" he asked softly. "Finch, Crawford, they'll hunt you from here to the border. You burned the only proof they needed to protect themselves. Now they'll burn you instead." Sera raised the colt. "Maybe they'll try." Tom sighed, and for a moment there was almost pity in his eyes. "You've got your father's fire, I'll give you that. But fire don't last long in the desert." He moved faster than she expected. The shot cracked, one, then two. Her bullet took him in the shoulder. His tore through her side. She stumbled back, teeth gritted, clutching the wound. Tom dropped to one knee, blood spreading under his coat. "Damn shame," he muttered. "Could have used someone like you." Sera stepped forward, the colt still steady despite the pain. "You already did," she said, and then she fired once more. The echo rolled down the canyon, soft as thunder far away. When it faded, only wind and dust remained. She pressed her hand to her side. The wound wasn't deep, through the flesh, not the bone. But it burned like sin, and she knew it'd slow her down. She tore a strip from her dress, wrapped it tight, and climbed back into the saddle. "Sorry, Harlan," she whispered to the open air. "Looks like your ledger's still open." By sundown, she reached the edge of a small mining town called Perdition Hollow, one of those places that didn't exist on any map because no one wanted to claim it. A crooked sign leaned at the entrance. "No God here." She smiled grimly. "Good," she muttered. "Neither am I." The The saloon was half empty when she entered. The piano sat quiet, its keys yellowed by dust. Two men at the bar looked up, saw the Colt, and looked back down. Smart. Behind the counter, the barkeep froze when he saw the blood on her side. "You look like hell," he said. "Feels worse," she replied. "Whiskey. Bottle." He slid it across without another word. Sera drank slow, the burn grounding her. She could feel eyes on her back, always eyes in places like this. But none mattered. Only the name she spoke under her breath. Laurel Finch. Somewhere out there, that woman was still moving pieces, still signing names, still burying truths. And Harlan Pike was still in the ground, believing the truth had died with him. Sera wiped the blood from her hand, holstered the Colt, and stood. "Time to change that," she said softly. She stepped back into the street. The wind picked up again, carrying the scent of rain that never came. Somewhere far beyond the mesas, thunder rolled like a promise. Perdition Hollow looked different by moonlight. Every shadow held a memory, every doorway a sin. The storm had not come, yet the wind ran through the empty street like a messenger that had lost its message. Sera walked the main road alone, her boots tracing the faded tracks of wagons that hadn't rolled in years. The town smelled of coal dust and whiskey rot. Somewhere, a hinge squeaked like a dying songbird. Her wound ached with each step, but she didn't slow. Harlan's voice lived behind her ribs now, low and steady. "If you start something, finish it clean." She reached the far end of town, where the old telegraph office leaned against its own shadow. The door bore a single symbol carved deep, a laurel branch, neat and cruel. Finch had been here. Inside, the place was quiet except for the tick of a clock with no hands. Piles of ledgers covered the table, all stamped with Crawford's seal. Lines of names filled every page: miners, ranchers, lawmen, and the dead. Transactions written in perfect script. The ink was dry, but it smelled fresh. Sera took a match from her pocket and struck it. The flame threw her shadow tall against the wall. "This time," she whispered, "the truth burns first." Before she could drop it, a voice came from the back room. "I wouldn't." Miss Laurel Finch stepped out from the dark. She was dressed in black now, not the travel gray. The kind of black that made pale skin look like marble and eyes like polished stone. A small revolver rested easy in her gloved hand. Sera didn't lower the match. "You follow me all this way just to talk." "I never left," Finch said. "This is one of mine. I keep my business close." "Business?" Sera's voice cracked into a laugh. "That what you call it? You kill men for numbers and call it balance." Finch's expression didn't shift. "You think the West survives on poetry, Miss Blackwood? It survives on ledgers, on debts paid and promises kept. The living don't eat truth, they eat bread. And bread needs coin." "Coin bought my father's death," Sera said. Finch nodded slowly. "And yours will buy peace, if you let it." Sera smiled without humor. "You don't want peace. You want quiet." Finch's voice softened, dangerous in its calm. "Tell me where the copy is, and I'll make this painless." "What copy?" "The one you mailed from Santa Fe 2 weeks ago," Finch said. "The one addressed to the marshal's office." "You think I wouldn't know?" Sera's pulse jumped. She hadn't told a soul. The letter, the real letter, hadn't burned. She'd written her father's words again, added her own truth, and sent it before riding into the desert. Finch smiled slightly at her silence. "Ah, there it is. Guilt. The oldest confession." Sera's hand tightened on the match. "That letter don't belong to you. It belongs to whoever lives to use it," Finch replied. "You won't." The pistol lifted. Time slowed. Sera blew out the match and dropped to the floor as Finch fired. The muzzle flash lit the room in violent orange. A bullet tore through the shelves behind her. Sparks flew from shattered glass. Sera rolled, kicked the table hard. The ledgers toppled, spilling pages into the air like frightened birds. She pulled her Colt, fired once. The bullet clipped Finch's shoulder, spinning her against the wall. Finch hissed, but didn't fall. She raised the gun again, steady even through the pain. "You don't understand," Finch said. "Crawford dies, another man takes his seat. The names change, but the ink stays wet. You can't kill a machine girl." Sera stood, The Colt aimed dead at her. "Maybe not," she said, "but I can starve it." She shot the lantern hanging from the ceiling. Oil spilled across the floor, fire blooming wild and greedy. The ledgers caught fast, each page curling in the heat. Finch screamed, a sound more fury than fear, and lunged forward. The two women collided amid the flames. The revolvers skidded away. The Colt clattered to the floor. Sera hit first, breath driven from her chest. Finch's gloved hand closed around her throat, forcing her back into the burning wood. "You think you're righteous," Finch snarled. "You're just another fool who wants to believe the dirt can be washed clean." Sera clawed at her wrist, gasping. "You're wrong," she choked out. "The dirt's all we got, but I ain't letting it bury me." Her hand found a broken spur pinned at her belt, a piece of Harlan's grave. She swung it hard, catching Finch across the face. The woman reeled back with a cry, her glove falling away, skin blistering in the firelight. Sera grabbed the Colt and aimed. Finch froze. "Go on," Finch said, blood running from her cheek. "Do it. You think killing me changes the story?" Sera's voice was steady now. "No, but it changes who tells it." The shot echoed through Perdition Hollow like judgment itself. Finch fell, silent and still, her black dress catching light as the flames rose higher. Sera stumbled out into the street, smoke trailing her like a shroud. Behind her, the telegraph office burned. Pages, ink, names, all of it turning to ash. The fire roared up the walls, bright enough to paint the whole sky red. She climbed onto Brindle, gripping the saddle horn tight. The horizon was wide open, a dark ribbon of land stretching toward the unknown. Somewhere out there, the marshal's office would open her letter. Maybe they'd read it, maybe they'd bury it. But the truth was out now, written by a woman no one expected to matter. She turned the mare toward the rising dawn. Her side bled, her voice gone raw from smoke, but her eyes were bright, clear in a way they hadn't been since she'd first been chained to that rock. As the first light broke over the mesas, she whispered, "Ride on, Harlan. Ledger's clean." The wind answered with a low, mournful sigh that carried across the plains, as if the desert itself had found peace for once. Behind her, Perdition Hollow burned until nothing remained but cinders and the smell of truth. By dawn, the storm finally came. It rolled in from the south with a voice older than scripture, thunder rumbling low across the desert, rain dragging long gray curtains behind it. The kind of storm that washed tracks clean and grave shallow. Sera rode through it, coat drawn close, hat pulled low. The rain felt sharp on her skin, stinging the wound that never stopped bleeding right. Brindle's breath came hard, but she kept her pace, hooves sinking deep into the softening earth. Behind her, Perdition Hollow smoldered in silence. The fire had burned through the night, taking every name, every debt, every chain. The wind had carried the smoke east, toward the cities that built their fortunes on men like Harlan Pike. Sera didn't look back. Some ghosts weren't worth seeing twice. At noon, the rain thinned to a whisper. She stopped near a dry arroyo where a lone saguaro cactus stood guard over a scatter of stones. The air smelled clean, rare, and pure. She dismounted and let Brindle drink from a shallow pool, rainwater trembling with ripples. She reached into her saddlebag and pulled out a folded scrap, the last unburned corner of the letter she hadn't meant to save. It bore only 3 words in her father's shaky hand. "Forgive what I did." She turned it over once, twice, then let it go. The wind lifted it, carried it across the basin until it vanished into the gray horizon. "Forgiveness," she murmured. "Ain't that a fool's luxury?" She sat on a rock, pulled the chain from around her neck, the same chain that once bound her to the desert floor. Rusted now, but still strong. She laid it down in the sand. "Guess we're both free," she said softly. A hawk cried overhead. For a heartbeat, she imagined it was Harlan's voice, rough and low. "You did right, girl." She smiled faintly. "Ain't sure I did, old man. But it's done." From the north, a rider appeared, small against the shimmering heat. She waited, hand on her Colt, until the figure drew close enough to see. A boy, no older than 16, coat too big, eyes too honest for this country. He pulled up a few yards away. You, Sera Blackwood? She nodded slowly. Who's asking? Marshal's office sent me, he said, holding out a wrapped oilskin packet. Said this was addressed to you. Sera's stomach turned cold. She took the packet and unwrapped it. Inside was a single page, stamped with the seal of the territorial marshal. Official notice. The crimes of Harlan Pike, known gunman and fugitive, are hereby pardoned posthumously. His service in delivering evidence of governmental corruption is recognized by the territory of New Mexico. Signed, Acting Marshal Benjamin Cade. Below the seal, someone had written in pencil, faint and rough. He bought us time. Don't waste it. Sera's throat closed. She folded the letter carefully and slipped it into her coat. The boy shifted in his saddle. They said you'd know what it meant. I do, she said quietly. He nodded. You riding somewhere particular? She looked west, where the horizon opened into endless light. Not yet, but I reckon I'll know when I get there. He tipped his hat and rode off, leaving her in the fading rain. Sera mounted Brindle again. The mare snorted, restless, as thunder rolled one last time. As they started west, Sera glanced once more at the horizon. She thought of her father, a man swallowed by greed, redeemed too late. Of Harlan, who'd carried his guilt like a badge until it broke him. Of Finch, who'd built empires out of signatures and flame. Every one of them a piece of her story. Every one of them buried by their own choices. And yet, the desert lived on. The sun broke through the clouds, spilling gold across the sand. The raindrops on Brindle's mane turned to silver sparks. The air shimmered, bright and alive. Sera smiled to herself. Not joy, not sorrow, but something in between. The quiet peace of a woman who had stopped running from her name. She whispered, there ain't no saints in the Badlands. Just folks who learn to live with what they've done. The wind caught her words, carried them forward, scattering them like seeds into the wild places where no law could reach. And somewhere far behind her, the ashes of perdition hollow cooled beneath the rain. By the time night fell, Sera Blackwood had vanished into the desert. Another ghost riding toward redemption, or damnation, or whatever waited past the next ridge. No one ever found her grave. But sometimes, when the wind changed, folks swore they saw a lone rider moving against the sunset, coat whipping behind her like smoke, a rusted chain glinting at her throat. They said she never looked back, and maybe that was her mercy. In a land where the law was written in dust and erased by rain, Sera Blackwood became more than a name. She became a question. What does justice cost when everyone's guilty of something? Some said she died crossing into Mexico. Some said she became a legend, saving lost travelers from the storms she once feared. But those who rode the same country at dusk, when the sky burned the color of blood and forgiveness, knew better. They'd whisper it softly, the way men do around dying fires. The West don't remember its heroes. It remembers its ghosts. And if you listen close enough, you could still hear her voice riding the wind. Low, fierce, and free. Some truths don't need saving. They just need telling.